So in today's War Thunder video, we're going to be looking at a leak list for War Thunder. Normally, I don't like doing this sort of content because it kind of just gives clout to people who really don't deserve it. But majority of the time, the leak lists are fake. But for this one, at least, whenever it comes to War Thunder, it seems to be at least a little bit correct whenever it comes to the vehicles which will be coming in the next major update. Normally, my rule for a leak list is that it has to have 3 vehicles post whenever the leak list comes out. So for at least this leak list, STRV-121 and as well as the Centauro 120 definitely are vehicles, to me at least, that did not count because, they were released pretty much on the same day as this thing. But with this leak list now being out and we have vehicles like the Wessex on there and as well as just a weird vehicle like the VTT DCA, which is the SPAA for France, I definitely think this leak list has some credibility to it now, especially since those 2 vehicles I would have pretty much assumed no one would have ever guessed in a million years. So definitely going to be going over it now, just seeing what will come to the major updated War Thunder. Now, just as I've said, this is a leak list, so there definitely can be stuff that is on here that is not going to come, and also vehicles which are not on here that will come, so definitely have to put that into perspective. So the first vehicle we have on the list is the STRV-121B2, which is going to be the pre-order. We've already seen this one, so not we're going to cover it as much whenever it comes to this, but it seems like a pretty good premium whenever it comes to Sweden. It's basically just a Leopard 2A4. It seems pretty good, and I don't really think there's much else to talk about because you really just copy-paste premium. The next one is the FB721. This one's actually pretty interesting because this is the Fox. It is the wonderful little scout car for Britain, which has the Warrior cannon on it. So overall, it's going to be a pretty decent little scout. The lethality of it, though, whenever it comes to the battle rating, I don't think it's going to be 8.3. If anything, I feel like this is going to be probably a 7.3 vehicle. It's going to be a little bit tough, especially when you're facing stuff like IS-4Ms and as well as just, insane stuff like a mouse, for example, whenever it comes to this vehicle, because you don't have an ATGM that you can rely on to go through the heavy armor of these vehicles. So definitely will be a vehicle that I'm kind of interested in seeing. It'll be very fun to actually play, but at the end of the day, it's going to be probably a little bit scout car that kind of just goes around the map and uses its very low firing, cannon to get some kills, which, can be a really cool thing or a really bad thing. So the next vehicle on this list is the F20 Tiger Shark. Honestly, this is a very controversial one because they're putting this in as a premium, and for right now, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a pre-order premium because it within this leak list, it kind of shows what the vehicles will be, either be a premium or pre-order. So maybe this one is just for Golden Eagles within War Thunder. I'm kind of confused on why that would be, but it would have been really cool if this vehicle in general was just a tech tree vehicle, being able to kind of fill that gap between the F5E and F16s that are currently within the tech tree of America. But I don't really know why it's a premium. It's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be probably a really good one. But at the end of the day, it really just depends on what battle rating they give this thing, what, aim 9s they give it, and what the ordinances of this vehicle is. And then we'll kind of just see where it kind of falls into. But overall, as a premium, kind of disappointed, but I kind of do understand because it was a vehicle that really wasn't adopted much anywhere. So definitely a kind of prototype-ish type vehicle. So definitely we'll have to see what they do with that. So the next vehicle is a very low tier one, and it's the BF109C1. Basically, this vehicle I think is just going to kind of span the gap of the BF109B1 and as well as the E1. It's probably going to be around 1.7, maybe 2.0, just depending on, how it kind of does. But it's going to be a vehicle that's very low tier. It's going to be very fun to kind of just play 2 games and spade it and kind of just get over it. But it is another BF109, which honestly is just really fun to see within War Thunder. So the next vehicle we have is a vehicle for the US and as well as China, which is the AH-1W, which is basically a Super Cobra. Honestly, I'm not really diverse whenever it comes to helicopters, but I do know this one can at least carry tows and as well as Hellfires. To me, at least, it would be cool if this vehicle was at a different battle rating than, 10.3, which I'm assuming that I'll probably put it at, or maybe even 10.7, because the thing about helicopters is that they're always at the wrong BRs whenever it comes to the lineup they need to support, and helicopters in War Thunder, to me at least, don't really feel that great to play, especially the lower tier ones, which are, dedicated to using tows, or dedicated to using, stuff that's not kind of fire and forget in a way. The next one is going to be another controversial one because it is the Leopard 2A4M, which is a Canadian Leopard, which is probably going to go into the German tech tree. It does say Canada whenever it comes to the tech tree that it's going to, but as we know, there's not a Canadian tech tree within War Thunder, and there's not any more vehicles on this leak list that are Canadian. So I'm assuming it's just going to be a Leopard 2A4 that goes to Germany, and probably would just be a extra Leopard to add to the lineup. Honestly, Germany's doing really good right now whenever it comes to their top tier, so not really sure why this is being added to bolster the lineup even more, but a Leopard is always cool to see, and it should be very interesting, especially if you are interested in Canadian equipment. The next vehicle is for China, and it's the ZBD-04, which is a IFV for China. So it'll be one of the IFVs that come for the Chinese top tier, which I know a lot of people wanted to see. The easiest way to basically sum this vehicle up is it's a BMP3, but for China, or a BMP4, whatever you really want to say. It's going to have 100mm, it's going to have its HE, it's going to have the ATGM, and as well as going to have a 30mm cannon, which you will be able to shoot. Probably just going to be a copy-paste, BMP3, which, is not the best in the world, but it is very much usable whenever it comes to War Thunder. The next one is another controversial one, which is going to be the Alpha Jet. And the reason I say this is going to be controversial is because this vehicle is very poor flight performance wise, but it's a vehicle that can be equipped with a bunch of equipment that can make its BR go extremely high for what it is. Now, this vehicle is going to the good old UK and as well as France, according to this leak list. And it's like I just said, it's a vehicle that can be either put at too low of a BR, or it could be a vehicle that's put at too high of a BR, because the whole purpose of this thing is being a light attack aircraft. And with it having access to like magics and as well as having access to very potent AIM-9s, it's going to be a vehicle that I think is going to be very over-tiered, just depending on what they give it. Hopefully they put it at a battle rating which it can perform in, because at the end of the day, this vehicle more or less is just a CAS aircraft, because its flight performance wise is going to be pretty poor within War Thunder. The next one we have is the Centauro 120. We've already seen this in the pre-order. It's just a copy paste for the tech tree. It's going to be a pretty cool thing to grind out the Italian tech tree with, but overall it's just a copy paste. So the next vehicle we have is the ZSU-23 M4, which I think this vehicle is just a ZSU-23, which has, I believe, Iglas on it. So it's going to have a capability of shooting like a fire forget missile whenever it comes to the air. But honestly, the Iglas, for me, at least whenever I've tried them on helicopters in the past, have been very poor whenever it comes to their implementation. It just kind of upgrades the ZSUs. The ZSU is a pretty decent SPA. The only problem about it is the radar is pretty limited. And then also the 23s, the range of them isn't the best in the world. But overall, given the fact that it's just going to get given a fire forget missile for it, honestly, it's just going to be pretty cool. It's man-pads, it should give it a little bit more range and also just a little bit more capability. But the question about it is that the current one within the tech tree is 8.0. Is this thing going to be 8.3 or 8.7, depending on, kind of where they add it at. So the next vehicle is for Russia, and it's the T-80UD. This vehicle is a very interesting one because they trade out the turbine, which you normally see within the T-80s, for a diesel engine, which means that the actual weight of the vehicle is going to go up, and also the kind of horsepower to ton ratio is going to go down. So it's basically just going to be a slower T-80. I mean, that's the basic way to put it. Just depending on what rounds they get it, I would assume this is probably going to be the same battle rating as maybe the T-90A of 10.7. Maybe they top it out at 3BM42 or something like that, and it kind of just coexists with the T-90. The T-90 has been a really good vehicle for the Russians. The only problem is it's the only vehicle that is at 10.7. So you definitely need another vehicle to kind of round out that lineup, and I feel like this vehicle could be something that kind of does that. The only big thing about it is the mobility. It's going to be worse. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they kind of do this vehicle within War Thunder. The next vehicle we've already seen, it came out in a devlog today, which is the VTT DCA. It's just going to be a little low tier SPA for France. Should be pretty cool. Should be very fun to actually spit out, and we will kind of see it whenever it does come. The next one is a interesting one, and kind of one that I was kind of expecting to come, and that's kind of why I made the video on it in the past, is the M60-120S. So if you don't know what this is, it's the M60-2000. It's a vehicle that was a kind of, upgrade of existing M60s for countries like Turkey, and as well as anyone that's basically had M60s they wanted to upgrade, of where they could put an Abrams turret on it, which is kind of crazy. So overall, this vehicle is very surprising to me that it's not coming in as an event vehicle for America. It's coming in as a tech tree. Most likely is going to go under the tech tree that is where the M60A3 is, so the TTS. It should be a pretty interesting vehicle. The hull of the machine should be very weak, but the turret itself should be very strong, and I'm assuming that it's probably going to come in at a battle rating of either 10.0 or 10.3, just depending on how it kind of does. The question about it is that it's going to have a very potent round, which is M829, and even if they want to kind of buff it a little bit more, it could even bring in M829A1. So definitely is going to be an interesting one to see. I feel like it's going to be a vehicle that's going to be very hard to balance whenever it comes to War Thunder, because the gun is really good, but the turret itself is going to be decent, and then the hull is going to be trash. So it should just basically be able to be pinned by everything whenever it comes to War Thunder. So the next vehicle we have is the Merkava 3 Ram Seagull. I believe that's how I said it. If I butchered it, I'm very sorry, but it's going to be a pre-order according to this leak list. And it's a vehicle that's very interesting if you look into it. It's got an active protection system, funny enough, and it's just a Merkava 3, right? But the unfortunately, protection system works a little bit differently compared to what we have in games right now. It's not a hard kill APS system. It's a soft kill to where whenever it's shot at with like a ATGM, for example, it will turn its turret to where it got shot from, and then it will fire off smoke. And I'm assuming because it's turning the turret towards that direction, your hope is if that ATGM hits you, it hits some of the strongest armor on your tank. So honestly, it's going to be a pretty interesting one. It could be possibly a very annoying one, especially if it does it all on its own and shoots off your smokes, or, you know, it kind of turns the turret when you're about to shoot somebody else. It can be quite annoying, but I'm wondering to see if War Thunder will actually implement this thing, or it will be just kind of like a, you know, it just kind of like it's a laser warning system in a way. It'd be very interesting if War Thunder does do this, but I can't understand completely. It could be very, very annoying, especially if it, like, you know, points to something that you're not really, you know, looking to actually engage at that moment. So the next vehicle we have is the Su-25 SM3. This vehicle is kind of like a life extension program for the Su-25s, like the regular ones, not the Su-25Ts. But it's a very interesting vehicle because it's like a vehicle that I kind of feel like is just going to be DOA like the other Su-25s were, because they're too high of a BR for what they kind of are whenever it comes to War Thunder. And that honestly is kind of a problem. If any Su-25 is past 10.0, I feel like the flight performance of the Su-25 is just subpar, you know, even if they're given like R-73s or, you know, different, you know, air-to-air missiles, or even like really good air-to-ground missiles, the flight performance of them is just so poor that they really can't do nothing. They just can get swatted out of the air whenever it comes to that. So yeah, definitely the Su-25 is going to be interesting. I kind of feel like it's kind of DOA whenever it comes to War Thunder. So the next vehicle is for Sweden, and it's a very controversial one because it's the Panzer 6B. So if you don't know what this is, I didn't either, so I looked it up on Google, and this thing says that it's the Tiger 2H. So if you didn't know, during like the post World War II, Sweden collected some of the German equipment so they can kind of figure out what they want to do with it, and also just shoot at it whenever it comes to, you know, kind of testing their own equipment. So Sweden, you know, collected some Shermans, they collected Panzer IVs, they collected, I believe, a Panther, and even this like Tiger 2. So whenever they collected these things, Gaijin kind of thinks that now they should just be put into the tech tree, which means that they're adding vehicles which are kind of like captured stuff, but they didn't use them in a like official capacity other than kind of moving them around to be shot and you kind of studying them. So it's a very controversial addition to it, but I understand why Gaijin is doing it, for the simple fact of that Sweden does not have a heavy tank. And whenever it comes to different tech trees, you want them to be able to do dailies and specials very reliably and do, like, you know, battle pass challenges. And if you play Sweden and only Sweden, you can't accomplish that because you don't have a heavy tank to be able to do those challenges. So I understand why it's being added. Do I agree with it? Not really, but at the end of the day, it is just a Tiger 2, so it's just a copy paste to give Sweden access to a heavy tank. That's pretty much all it really is at the end of the day, I think. So the next vehicle we have here is the Buccaneer S2B. This is coming in for Great Britain according to the Leaklist, and it could be a very interesting vehicle because it could be our first introduction to anti-radiation missiles. The reason I say this is because it has the Martel missile on it that could possibly come to game. That could be our first introduction to them, and I feel like the Buccaneer, because of the platform of it, is not a great vehicle whenever it comes to War Thunder, and it could be a very good introduction to anti-radiation missiles just to see what the performance is on the game, and really just give like a testing ground for them. Because the problem with anti-radiation missiles with War Thunder is that you have some of them, like the very early ones, which were made to go after, you know, actual like SAM sites. It wasn't really made to go after like a ZSU or like a Tunguska or something. They were made to go after the big installation. And the thing about it is that you needed the like kind of like band that the radar was on to actually target it. And with War Thunder, that kind of isn't possible with the way that they like introduced it into the game. But for this one, at least, you'd be able to switch the bands that you're shooting at with the Buccaneer, which means that you would be able to actually kind of engage some of the SPAs whenever it comes to War Thunder. The only question once again is what happens if you start team killing with your anti-radiation missiles? Will that be possible? Because as we know, the battlefields of War Thunder are pretty small compared to what real life would actually be. So the last two things on this list are kind of stuff that is a little bit of a speculation of what it could be, and also the Wessex. The Wessex is coming. It's a helicopter. It looks pretty cool. It looks like a wonderful little helicopter, but I'm not honestly interested in it. We've already seen a dev block for it, so if you want to see that, it's definitely going to be on the War Thunder website. But we also have the last thing, which is the Hungarian Air Tech Tree. So honestly, just going to be a really good addition to Italy. Like, they're just going to get some more vehicles whenever it comes to that. Italy will probably now be the nation which has just one of the best air trees because they have pretty much everything. They have access to 104s, they have access to F-16s, tornadoes, Harriers, And with the Hungarian air tree coming in, they'll have access to even MiG-29. So honestly, for Italy, they just have like pretty much the best of both worlds whenever it comes to their tech tree if the Hungarian air sub tree is actually added to them. But yeah, what do you guys think about this leak list? Honestly, it's looking to be a pretty okay update. Like definitely I see some stuff that I'm interested in whenever it comes to this, but overall I do see a ton of pre-order premiums and also just some very, I would say, very subjectively added vehicles whenever it comes to this update, and definitely we'll just have to see once the dev server comes out and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys in the next War Thunder video.